This was the most crucial 30 seconds in the lives of the 7-man prison break team. They all held their breath, anxiously awaiting the signal to charge. As the contact outside the prison knocked down the electric pole, the searchlight on the watchtower plunged the area into darkness.
30 seconds. Go.
The opportunity was fleeting. At Michael's command, Lechero was the first to climb out of the hole, followed closely by Teabag, with Bellick in third position. But at this critical moment, Michael stopped the remaining 3 in their tracks. Meanwhile, the 3 on the ground madly dashed towards the fence. However, just 5 seconds into their run, the backup generator restored power, and the searchlight on the watchtower was relit. The 3 of them were dumbfounded, and at the moment they didn't dare to make the slightest move. Realizing their predicament, Lechero knew staying meant certain death, so he dashed towards the prison exterior, disregarding everything. But then, a volley of bullets flew towards him. Lechero fell to the ground, fortunately only hit in the chest. Bellick and Teabag were petrified by the scene, reluctantly raising their hands to surrender. Michael, hidden under a manhole cover, peeked out in feigned panic as he reported the situation above to his allies. But Mahone, ever so clever, guessed Michael had known the timing of the generator's activation all along. There wasn't actually 30 seconds, and the 3 captured were merely Michael's scapegoats. Michael claimed he had merely miscalculated the timing. He peeked out again and indeed found the surroundings filled with trucks loaded with prison guards, along with patrol vehicles that were usually hidden in the jungle. These vehicles were exactly what they needed to continue their escape. The guards took the 3 to the yard, interrogating them on how they infiltrated the restricted area. Teabag knew that speaking out meant certain death, but keeping silent offered a sliver of hope. His mind raced as he quickly thought up a suitable excuse, but he never thought that the guards just gently locked Bellick, and the death-hungry Bellick explained everything.
Tunnel! Where? Under Lechero's room!
Teabag was utterly speechless at this fool, and Lechero was nearly driven to internal injury from anger. Led by Bellick, a large force immediately arrived at the tunnel entrance, now only separated from Michael by a coated door. The captain ordered his men to blow the lock off. Hearing the noise, the other escapees urged Michael to act quickly, calmly surveying his surroundings and ensuring no guards were around the trucks. Michael cautiously climbed out of the hole, swiftly hiding under a jeep. James and Mahone followed suit. McGrady, trailing last, was on edge, even hearing the sounds of guards climbing ladders. Just a second before McGrady's feet left the ground, a guard's had finally appeared.
Nada. ¿Estás seguro?
Only then did Teabag realize they had been duped by Michael, but they could blame no one but themselves for desperately wanting to be at the front of the line. Thinking Bellick was deceiving them, Mestas punched him directly in the nose without hesitation. To prove his truthfulness, Bellick blurted out the names of the other 4, suggesting a head count in the cells to verify. The guards quickly confirmed 4 inmates were missing. Meanwhile, as the guards were occupied with the head count, Michael and his group hurriedly crawled from under the jeep, using the vehicle as cover to escape the prison. When Mestas reached the fence, he found only a large gap left behind. The group ran from night till dawn, finally escaping the jungle to reach a vast beach. Lincoln, their contact, had been waiting there for a long time, but with no boat in sight, how would they escape the relentless pursuers behind them? Lincoln ran straight for a mound of sand and began digging furiously. Michael had planned the escape route from the prison. Knowing the beach could perfectly conceal their footprints, he had Lincoln bury oxygen tanks here in advance. Taking a boat would make them too conspicuous and easily intercepted. To evade capture, they had to disappear without a trace. He instructed everyone to remove their shoes and socks, put them in a box, and rebury it, while their valuables were sealed in bags to be carried. Mahone pleaded with Lincoln to save a photo of his son, but considering Mahone had killed Lincoln's father, if not for the fear of exposing their whereabouts, Lincoln would have wished to tear him to pieces right then and there. How could he possibly agree to safeguard his belongings? Just then, James noticed something amiss. The most crucial bird guidebook, containing coordinates needed by the company, was missing.
Must have fell out of my pocket.
I thought you already figured out the coordinates.
Well, I didn't memorize them. I wrote them in the book.
In order to get rid of the pursuers behind them, they could only go into the water first. The 5 men jumped into the sea, disappearing into the vast ocean. Minutes later, a large group of guards arrived at the beach. Scanning the sea with binoculars, they found no trace of any boat. Wondering how the escapees could have vanished into thin air, they returned to search the jungle. Meanwhile, Lincoln led the others underwater towards a destination. When they surfaced, they clung to a buoy for a brief respite, utterly exhausted, but Lincoln realized something was wrong. According to the plan, Sucre should have been there with the yacht, but the sea was eerily quiet. Unbeknownst to them, Sucre was detained in the guard's office due to his fugitive status, with his phone already confiscated by the guards. Now, without enough oxygen or strength to swim back, they faced the grim prospect of perishing at sea. In life, it's rare to find such a friend who, even when beaten to a pulp and buried alive, will still protect you with his last breath. Yet, throughout your life, you'll encounter countless friends of this sort. When you're shining bright, they would kneel on the ground, wishing they could lick the dirt off your shoes clean. But when you fall into hard times, they'd viciously step on you and then ruthlessly suffocate you without a second thought. Watching this episode of Prison Break, you'll understand why. In real life, the first type of friend is becoming increasingly rare, while the second type is as common as dirt. Just last night, the 7-member Prison Break team seized their chance to escape, but 3 were caught on the spot, while the other 4, under Michael's leadership, successfully broke free. The guards gathered all the prisoners in the yard and subjected Bellick, one of the 3, to brutal torture. They beat him from night till day, trying to force out of him the whereabouts of Michael and the others. However, Bellick was not exactly a loyal brother, as he genuinely had no clue where Michael and the rest had gone. Poor Bellick was knocked unconscious multiple times, leaving only Lechero and Teabag available for questioning. But with Lechero critically wounded from a gunshot, the guards could only drag Teabag, with his arm broken, towards the interrogation room. On the way, Teabag was pushed over by a guard and accidentally discovered a bird book under a car, which he had seen Michael and James valuing greatly. Using the opportunity, Teabag sneakily slipped the book into his pocket. Once in the interrogation room, the guards didn't waste time talking and directly stripped Teabag of his white shorts.
There's no need to refry my beans. Always with the wise talk. Never saying anything we want to hear. Now all I want to hear.
Seeing his private parts about to be electrified into roasted sausages, Teabag was scared out of his wits and hurriedly hid in a corner. But then, he accidentally saw Sucre locked in the next room, thus making Sucre the prime target for interrogation.
But he knows! He knows everything! He knows it!
Although he repeatedly stated he didn't know Michael, when a stack of files was handed to Mestas, Sucre could no longer deny it, because inside was Sucre's warrant in the USA, while Teabag smirked maliciously in the background. Soon after, Sucre, who had been knocked unconscious countless times, struggled to open his eyes, completely disfigured, yet he didn't utter a word throughout. Seeing they had hit a tough knot, Mestas decided to subject him to even more brutal punishments. As Sucre was being dragged away, he saw Teabag and Mestas laughing and walking out together. Quickly, Sucre was taken to an empty lot where the guards handed him a shovel to dig his own grave as the gravedigger. Severely injured, he managed to dig the hole. Raphael threatened Sucre again, saying if he didn't reveal Michael's whereabouts, to just lie down quietly in the pit.
Even if I do.
Shovel after shovel of sand was thrown on him, but Sucre would rather die than betray his friend. Gradually, the dust completely covered Sucre's head, yet he remained dignified. Witnessing such loyalty for the first time, Mestas knew it was futile and ordered his men to pull Sucre up and send him back to prison. But just then, the phone confiscated from Sucre started ringing. Raphael said, "If it's Michael calling, ask where he is." Sucre remained silent. Unexpectedly, Michael's voice actually came through on the phone. Knowing Michael was safe, a tear quietly slid down Sucre's eye. How could Michael and the others, clearly trapped at sea, appear dressed up on the streets? It turns out McGrady's father, Alfonso, had gone to the dock as agreed to pick up his son. However, upon arrival, he realized the boat Sucre was supposed to use to pick them up hadn't moved from the shore at all. Alfonso, sensing something had gone wrong, took the boat in the direction of the prison and indeed found the 5 men barely alive at sea. After being rescued, Michael, concerned, asked Sucre why he hadn't shown up at the agreed location and if he had encountered any mishap. Bearing the pain, Sucre calmly assured Michael he was okay. Knowing everyone was safe, Sucre didn't wait for Michael's response before he threw away the phone and crushed it underfoot, denying Raphael any chance of getting information.
Kill me if you want. Oh, puppy. You're gonna wish we had.
On the other side, with the inmates aware of the escape attempt, And with Lechero severely injured, the prisoners went on a rampage, looting and destroying everything in sight. Lechero was beaten by a group of inmates, and Bellic, trembling with fear, quickly pulled Teabag aside to hide. Surprisingly, Teabag, known for his venomous nature, shoved Bellic away, declaring his intention to save Lechero. "He once saw me as a brother, now it's my turn to repay him," he said. Teabag quickly intervened to drive away a few inmates and then helped Lechero to his room, which was in disarray, with people rummaging for valuables. Lechero, angered, took out a gun from the safe, scaring away 2 petty thieves. As the inmates gathered below Lechero's window, Bellic quickly fled, but Teabag seemed genuinely concerned for Lechero, tenderly treating his wounds. Lechero, suspecting ulterior motives, questioned Teabag's intentions.
You're the last one I expect to see at my side.
I take offense, Patron.
I've had many foot washes. Many men have come in with sheep's clothing, only to let the wolf come out. Whoa, whoa!
I am not trying to hurt you. I am trying to save you.
Save me. I'm gonna die here. Your life is in jeopardy just being with me.
Not necessarily.
Teabag finally revealed the truth. On the way back to prison, Mestas had told him that for $50,000, he could buy his freedom. Though Lechero was skeptical, with his life hanging by a thread, he questioned the value of money now.
Even if I could find the money, who could I trust to bring it in?
There is one person.
Teabag hurriedly called Lechero's former lover to bring the money inside. However, once Teabag received the money, his venomous fangs were finally bared. The only mercy was perhaps allowing Lechero to die with some dignity. From the beginning to the end, there was never a real chance to buy freedom with money. The venomous-hearted Teabag was only out to drain Lechero of his last value. Witnessing this scene, Bellic was so frightened that he didn't know where to put his hands.
Lechero is dead!
Soon after, Teabag delivered a passionate speech in the yard and distributed some of the money to the inmates, winning their hearts.
Money! Made off of your backs! And off the backs of your family! It's yours. And I'm here to tell you, I'm giving it back.
After a thorough brainwashing, the inmates were boiling with blood, unanimously recognizing Teabag as the new king of the prison. Though Teabag didn't manage to escape, he at least became the boss here. Meanwhile, Sucre was also sent back to prison, ironically ending up in a tragic situation for having laid down his life for his brothers. This is the grand finale of Prison Break Season 3, an episode where Michael's intelligence completely outwits the antagonist. Let's see how the exceptionally smart Michael manages to rescue LJ right under the noses of a dozen snipers. After Michael and the others returned to the dock, changed clothes, and bid farewell to McGrady and his son, it was time for them to get down to business. The four headed to a warehouse previously scoped out by Lincoln and then called Gretchen, asking her to bring the hostage LJ there for an exchange with James in 20 minutes. And she was not to bring any of her henchmen, but Gretchen was no fool. Her orders were to kill Michael, his brother, and LJ. Immediately after getting James back, while the brothers were discussing their plan, Mahone stepped forward and said, since what comes next is a personal vendetta between them, he would take his leave. But Lincoln was not about to let Mahone go easily, remembering that this man had killed his father.
I was gonna kill you at the beach, but I didn't want to do anything that was gonna get us caught. You shot my dad in the back. I'm gonna give you the courtesy you never gave him. Now turn around.
Mahone explained that if he did not pursue them, his entire family would be killed by the company, leaving him no choice. Lincoln was uninterested in his explanation, but just as he was about to shoot, the sound of shattering glass suddenly came from behind. It turned out that James had escaped through a window. Taking advantage of the brothers' distraction, Mahone also quickly ran outside, with Lincoln now too preoccupied to seek revenge. The brothers hurriedly chased after the fleeing James, who had already jumped off a container and stolen a car from a passerby, driving away.
What are we gonna do now?
The brothers were frantic, knowing that losing James meant LJ's certain death. They immediately drove after him, engaging in a high-speed chase. Seeing a traffic jam ahead, James quickly abandoned the car and ran, then borrowed a phone from a passerby to call Gretchen.
You need to come and pick me up.
Where are you?
Lincoln grabbed the phone only to find out that the person on the other end was Gretchen, revealing they had all been in cahoots. Returning to the warehouse for the exchange was no longer advantageous, so to ensure a safe escape, the brothers had to find a new location for the trade. Michael called Gretchen, arranging to meet in a crowded square where the company's men would not dare to make a move with so many witnesses around.
I'm thinking public place, wanted men, police, lots of witnesses to identify you.
Plaza de Francia, 10 minutes. Be alone.
Round everyone up.
They finally met, with Lincoln guarding James at gunpoint, while Michael instructed Gretchen to bring out the hostages. Unexpectedly, they also brought James' girlfriend, Sophia, as a hostage.
You move, you're dead.
Snipers positioned on rooftops had Lincoln and the others in their sights, ready to shoot them dead the moment the exchange was completed. But how could Michael possibly put himself in a disadvantageous position? He gave Lincoln a look, signaling him to leave with James. Gretchen was caught off guard, but without securing the hostages, she dared not act rashly.
What the hell is he doing?
This is not the point of the exchange. This is just a confirmation that everyone's still alive.
They're alive. Let's trade.
You'll get a call in 5 minutes telling you where to go next. And when the exchange is over, and LJ is safe, you and I are going to spend some quality time.
When the exchange is over, you better run for your life.
Michael then directed Gretchen to a nearby museum for the trade, sneakily taking a souvenir with him. With no choice, Gretchen led her people into the museum, but suddenly, the metal detector ahead let out a shrill beeping sound, and it was then that Gretchen realized why Michael had chosen this location. Unable to bring weapons inside, she had to hand over her gun to her subordinates and instruct them to guard the museum exits. L.J. couldn't help but mock Gretchen.
Walk.
Alone, Gretchen walked into the museum with the hostages, where Michael and his group had been waiting for a long time. Now, unable to play any tricks, the exchange of hostages officially began. L.J. walked over to Michael's side first, and James followed, embracing Sophia tightly. Meanwhile, Sophia urged James to give the coordinates to Gretchen and not to go with her, but James hesitated, avoiding eye contact. As Sophia pressed for answers, Gretchen finally revealed the truth. James had never been a fisherman, nor did he have any coordinates. It was all a lie he had concocted. In fact, James was a member of the company. The general had gone to great lengths to rescue him for a very important mission only he could carry out, with crucial information recorded in that bird guidebook. Heartbroken, Sophia lamented how she had given her all to get him out of prison, only to find out he had been exploiting her feelings all along, secretly working for a malevolent company. Thus, Sophia resolutely sided with Lincoln, but Gretchen was unruffled, reasoning that since the exits were blocked by the company's men, their attempt to leave was doomed to failure anyway. Michael had already anticipated such tricks and shattered the museum's glass with his elbow, setting off the alarm. This meant everyone had to exit through the main entrance and undergo security checks.
We're all walking out of here. Together.
As they left, Michael and his group smoothly passed the checks, but when the guards searched James' pockets, they found the souvenir Michael had sneakily placed there, leading to James being detained. Gretchen panicked, realizing if James was recognized and sent back to prison, their efforts would have been for naught. She hastily ordered her men to act. But in the ensuing chaos, a bullet struck Sophia. Lincoln rushed to rescue her, but he couldn't stay long. L.J. told Lincoln to go. He would stay behind to take care of Sophia. As the scene descended into chaos, Gretchen and James had already made their escape. Elsewhere, a disheveled Mahone appeared in a bar, now a wanted man even if he returned to the United States. Just then, a man entered, none other than the refreshed James, seemingly with a plan in mind. James had long intended to recruit Mahone.
You in?
I'm in.
Sophia was now out of danger. L.J. handed Michael Sarah's keepsake outside, a paper-folded rose. At Fox River State Penitentiary, Sarah had mentioned she disliked things that easily wilted, so Michael had given her an everlasting origami flower. Unexpectedly, Sarah had always kept it close. Michael was filled with melancholy, knowing his brother and nephew were safe, leaving him with one last unresolved matter: to kill Gretchen in revenge for Sarah. Not wanting to involve his brother's family, Michael bid farewell to Lincoln, taking the everlasting origami flower as he embarked on his path of vengeance.